Good morning, everyone. I am Silva Mathema, and I am an Associate Director in the Immigration team at the Center for American Progress. First, I'd like to welcome all of you to our call today. We are here today to talk about, to discuss the importance of temporary protected status for Nepali community as highlighted by an exciting new survey that CAP, the U.S. Immigration Policy Center, along with Adhikaar, just released this week. As many of you already know, Nepali nationals in the United States were granted temporary protected status in the aftermath of the devastating 2015 earthquake that took thousands of lives and caused substantial damage throughout the country. However, in 2018, the Trump administration decided to terminate TPS for Nepal, along with attempting to end it for other countries. This was met with several lawsuits, and the most recent decision by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed a decision, district court ruling that pretty much cleared the path for the termination to go forward. However, it is very important to note that the litigation is ongoing, so no one is losing status as of now. So that's a very important point to keep in mind. So against this backdrop, the survey of Nepali TPS holders digs really deep into how TPS has changed the lives of many Nepali immigrants and given them and it has given them a security and an opportunity to contribute to their communities. And we are delighted to have 4 guests on this call who can speak on the impact of TPS on the Nepali community from various different perspectives. I'm very happy to welcome Representative Grace Meng from New York 6th District. She's a member of a powerful House Appropriations Committee that funds federal agencies and programs, including the Department of Homeland Security. Next, we have Tom Wong, who is the principal researcher in this survey, as well as the author. He's an associate professor of political science and founding director of the U.S. Immigration Policy Center, USIPC, at the University of California, San Diego. We also have Pavitra Khati Benjamin, executive director of Adhikaar, a Queens-based organization that serves the Nepali community, both immigrants and refugees. And we are also joined by Navin Sherpa, who is a Nepali TPS holder and would like to share his experience. So without any further delay, let's begin our discussion. For anyone who has questions, we have time allotted at the end for you to ask them. Representative Meng, why don't we start with you? You have been an absolute champion for TPS holders and have done a lot of work on this issue, and we would love to hear your thoughts about this.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Grace Meng from Queens, New York, proud to share a district and community with Adhikaar. I'm honored to join all of you to highlight the Nepali community's significant contributions to our country. I commend Adhikaar, the Center for American Progress, and the U.S. Immigration Policy Center at UC San Diego for their path-breaking work. This report is the first ever look at how the U.S. benefits from the contributions of Nepali temporary protected status holders. As you all know, today there are about almost 15,000 Nepalis who are TPS holders in the U.S. This TPS designation came in 2015 when, shortly after the massive earthquake in Nepal, I helped lead the effort to urge the DHS to grant TPS to Nepalis living here in the U.S. TPS is not a decision that's made lightly, but it is a decision that is made compassionately. They have families, including American children. They work in our communities, pay taxes, and enrich our country in so many ways. TPS has given them a lifeline to pursue opportunities that would be impossible without this authorization. The report highlights several important statistics that support why TPS is beneficial. First, it gives Nepalis peace of mind and a sense of belonging. For example, nearly 85% of respondents agree or strongly disagree with the statement, "I feel like I belong more in the US because of TPS." Second, over 90% of the respondents got work authorization after receiving TPS. This allowed a lot of them to get jobs, and for nearly 2/3 of respondents, this meant finding jobs that fit their education and training. These are really promising findings that show how important TPS has been for the Nepali community and others. The Trump administration's anti-immigration efforts have, for the most part, failed, but they are nonetheless harmful. Uncertainty over TPS weighs heavily on the minds of so many people and families, and for almost 70% of respondents, they often think about not having this designation at least once a day. And so while the administration has failed to terminate TPS for the community, we must pass legislation that gives them greater protections and a pathway to citizenship. Last year, I was proud to help pass the American Dream and Promise Act, which would provide a pathway for TPS holders to seek legal permanent resident status. This would allow many to finally have permanent peace of mind to continue their lives. Home is here, and I will continue to work with all of you to fight for a pathway to citizenship for the Nepali TPS holders. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Representative Meng, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing for Nepali TPS holders as well as TPS holders in general. And next, we have Professor Tom Wong from USIPC. Tom, it would be great if you could give even more highlights on the research that we've done.
Thank you, Silva, and thank you all for joining us this morning. Thank you, Representative Meng, for your continued leadership on this issue. I also want to thank Adhikaar and the Center for American Progress for their incredible partnership on this important work. So to begin, between June 24th and August 3rd, we surveyed Nepali TPS holders. The total sample size is 372. To my knowledge, this is the first ever systematic survey of Nepali TPS holders and the largest survey to have been done. All surveys were conducted live via phone, and all enumerators were bilingual, English and Nepali. The sample frame consisted of a list of Nepali TPS holders compiled by Adhikaar, and with approximately 15,000 Nepali TPS holders in the US, this would put the margin of error at approximately 5%. So there are several key findings that I'd like to note, and the following speakers will help contextualize these results even further. So first, just over 8 out of every 10 respondents, or 81.5%, reported being concerned about the safety of themselves and their families if they no longer had TPS and were forced to return to Nepal. When combined with the findings that Representative Meng shared about respondents being concerned about deportation, being separated from their families, not being able to see their children grow up, these data make clear that efforts to secure permanent residency for Nepali TPS holders is not simply an immigration issue, but also a pressing human rights issue. We also see in the data that TPS status not only positively affects the lives of TPS holders and their families, but the economy more generally. For example, as Representative Meng also mentioned, 91.7% received work authorization after receiving TPS. And for those who were already working in the US prior to 2015, a full 94.3% reported that receiving TPS has allowed them to continue working. Over 3/4, 76.7% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that because of TPS, I've been able to earn more money, which has helped their families financially. And we also see that Nepali TPS holders are highly educated, as nearly 4 out of every 10 respondents, or 38%, reported having a bachelor's degree or higher. Beyond these statistics, we see in the jobs that Nepali TPS holders have just how vital they are on the front lines of fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. The occupations respondents reported include doctors, nurses, home health aides, and other frontline workers like grocery store workers, gas station workers, restaurant workers, package delivery services, as well as drivers for various rideshare companies. So I'll end by talking about the positive impact that TPS has had on inclusion and belonging. As Representative Meng also alluded to, a large percentage of respondents agree or strongly agree that I feel like I belong more in the US because of TPS. So that is 84.9% of our respondents. Now, more concretely, this is not just because of the ability to work in the United States, but also a function of the families that Nepali TPS holders are growing. For example, 6.2% of those who are married to US citizens. Another 29.4% of those who have children reported having children who are US citizens. Now, this survey provides one of the first ever looks into the demographic profiles of Nepali TPS holders. And indeed, what we see in the data that there are very few things that are temporary about the roots that Nepali TPS holders are creating in the US. So I look forward to the Q&A. I am proud to have partnered with Adhikaar and the Center for American Progress on this important report. We are providing what I believe to be the first systematic look into the experiences of Nepali TPS holders here in the US. And the following speakers will add more meat to the bones about what these data mean. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you very much for highlighting that it is very much a humanitarian issue, and that TPS holders have really deep roots with families and children here. And just to make that point even across better, we have Nabin Sherpa, who is the Nepali TPS holder and would like to share some experience with us. Nabin Dai, namaste. Why don't you share with us how TPS has helped you and your family?
Good morning, all. My name is Nabin Sherpa, and I was born in eastern Nepal, district zone of Everest. I worked as a planning guide during my time in Nepal. I came into the United States in May 1996. I was able to attend culinary school called Johnson and Wells in San Francisco. I am a chef and I work in a well-known restaurant called the Pine Creek Cookhouse in Aspen, Colorado for 12 years. In 2015, the Department of Homeland Security announced a TPS for Nepal. It was such a relief for me. My wife Sarala, our son Tenzing, and I were able to visit my family in Nepal, who haven't seen each other for more than 18 years. The feeling of seeing my family after so long was so special for me, but I realized that I need to remain in US and continue to building a future for my son, who was born in 2001 in California. After I got back from Nepal, I opened my own business called Sherpa Home Cooking Service, and I bought a house in Eagle, Colorado. Now I own a transportation company called Sherpa Transportation. My wife works in the restaurant. COVID was hard on both of us, but thankfully we have been able to continue both of our work and business. And I'm hopeful for the future. I felt that I have achieved my American dream, but what I don't know how long I will be able to stay in the country after contributing my 23 years to the United States. My son just began Colorado State University for 4 years. I was so proud of him for starting college in America. I felt that this is also a part of my family's American dream. Even though he is in the college, he is still my son and he needs our backing through guidance and economical support. I cannot imagine being separate from my family, and now I can't afford it anymore. Until now, the TPS lawsuit was protecting the 15,000 other Nepalese TPS holders and their families like us. But because of the recent decision, we don't know what will happen even more than before. Every day I'm concerned about what will happen, but I know there are people in Congress and every day people like you all who support our cause. We cannot live in this way anymore, and that is why TPS is not enough. TPS has granted my family and others like me so many things, and I'm grateful. But now we need permanent resident, and I hope the Senate will pass the Dream and Promise Act so that we can continue to our American dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Navindai. That was really powerful. And thank you for sharing your story with us. It really puts a face to all the numbers that we've been talking about and makes it very real. So thank you very much. And so this is a great segue to introduce our next speaker, who has been fighting for Nepali TPS holders, tirelessly. So next we have Pavitra Khati Benjamin, and who is Executive Director from Adhikaar. And Pavitra, why don't you talk to us about the work that you've been doing and what this survey means for Nepali TPS holders?
Great. Thank you, Silva. Namaste, my name is Pavitra Khati Benjamin. I'm the Executive Director at Adhikaar, and we are a worker center and a community center based out of Woodside, Queens, New York City, that serves and organizes the Nepali-speaking community. Adhikaar has been fighting for TPS since 2015, when we first won designation for Nepal. We're currently fighting for permanent residency for all TPS holders alongside Dreamers. And we're so pleased to be partnering with U.S. Immigration Policy Center, the University of California, San Diego, and Center for American Progress on this historical research of Nepali TPS holders. With the harmful decision that Ramos and Bhattarai v. Nielsen, hundreds of thousands of people, including 15,000 Nepali TPS holders, could face deportation in early 2021. It is under this threat that we released this survey in this report for us to highlight the urgent need for permanent residency for all TPS holders. In 5 years, we've reached at Adhikaar about 10,000 of 15,000 Nepali TPS holders by directly serving them or supporting them in better understanding TPS. Through our direct services and organizing of Nepali TPS holders, we knew already, but the survey proved that TPS holders were contributing immensely to the society and economy. Nepali TPS holders have established their lives here, they built community here, and they're here to stay. The survey released today with CAP and USIPC data highlights these points and has taught us so much more. The Trump administration terminated TPS for Nepal merely 2 years after the massive 7.8 earthquake in Nepal, noting that the country conditions were safe for people to return. But as Tom noted, the survey shows that 81.5% of Nepali TPS holders feel concerned about returning to Nepal because they worry about the physical safety of themselves and their family. That number rose to 85.3% for those with US citizen children. As a worker center, we also knew that TPS provided protection to those to be able to work. But again, the survey showed us those results. As Representative Meng and Tom noted earlier, a full 79.8% of respondents of those surveyed say that they were able to work in the US because of TPS. And as Tom noted earlier, and our membership reflects, many TPS holders are on the front line of this pandemic. They're putting their lives at risk so that many of us don't have to. Domestic workers like Samjana with TPS are taking care of other families during COVID, and delivery workers like Bishnu are delivering meals and groceries so folks don't have to leave their homes. They are supporting our economy during COVID. We also know that many are making ends meet during pandemic. The survey results showed us that 70.4% of TPS holders surveyed were currently employed. However, half of those individuals, or 58%, reported having their work hours reduced due to the pandemic. Among those who are not employed, 60.9% reported having lost their job within the past 3 months due to the pandemic. But even if people have lost their jobs, we know through Adhikaar that those individuals are supporting their community during the pandemic. We have folks like Sakuntala who lost their jobs that are also volunteering to help other nail salon workers apply for unemployment benefits. They're distributing food in the community. They're helping with supply delivery. So they are a part of their economy, whether they have a job or not, and they are part of their community. Nepali TPS holders are making great contributions to this American economy. Since receiving TPS, 59.1% of respondents reported opening bank accounts in the US, 32.7% reported purchasing cars, and 4.9% reported purchasing a home. But even beyond the economic contributions, what's important to note, in our opinion, is that 84.9% of those surveyed say they belong in the US. Representative Meng said this, Tom said this, Navin said this. That is important to note, that most folks' dreams are here in the US. I'm going to read you a quick excerpt from Keshav Bhattarai, who's a lead plaintiff in Bhattarai v. Nielsen, for a congressional briefing that he did on September 15th. This pandemic is impacting all of us. This is not a time to discriminate. We all need support. In this situation, it's immigrants and essential workers like me who are making sure that this country runs. I am a gas station owner in Northern California and a TPS holder. There's the pandemic and there are wildfires. I continue to work every single day and deal with this. My family is here, and this fight is about protecting our communities for the future. This is just one decision, and we have to remember our goal is permanent residency. He was referring to the Ramos v. Nielsen decision in that excerpt. Nepali TPS holders have their families and live here. As Navindai said, from Colorado, as Rajesh from New Hampshire, who was born and whose kids were born, teenage son and daughters were born here in the US. We have many Nepali TPS holders that have US citizen children. And when we think about the impact of TPS, it's not just about the 15,000 TPS holders. It's not just about them. It's about their families and their communities. There are grave implications from this very politically motivated decision from the Trump administration. And we know now through data the impact that Nepali TPS holders are having on this country. And we also know through data, which we knew through our work with TPS holders already, that they belong in this country. It's inhumane to keep playing with families' lives for political gains. This is why Adhikaar and Nepali TPS holders are fighting for permanent residency. We need permanent residency now. We are thankful for all the TPS holders who answered the surveys, the Nepali TPS holders who conducted the survey, and of course for the partnership of CAP and USIPC in producing the survey and analysis, and for Representative Meng for always supporting Nepali TPS holders. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavitra. That was great. And also thank you for all the amazing work that you have been doing for all these years. So that was the end of the brief intros. So we can go on to the questions now. And I'm not sure if we have any questions from the audience yet, but I have a few questions, and I can go ahead and ask if there aren't any. All right. Let's go on to questions now. And anybody can answer this question as well. What is an effective way to raise public awareness about the plight of TPS holders, as well as to build support for them? And I'm not sure if Representative Meng is on. I know she has to leave at 10. So.
I'm happy to start, but I think, Tom, it would be great to talk about data in this as well. I think for us, it really has been sharing the stories. And one of the things while we were in Congress or talking about TPS generally is they'd always say, look, you don't have any data to prove the economic contribution of TPS holders. So we said, okay, well, let's get some data, right? And so this is why this effort came about with CAP and Tom Wong's office. And so I think that for us, the best thing that we can do is try to get TPS holders who are really scared to share their story, folks like Nabinde. I think in the last year, we've had over 20 to 30 TPS holders share their story in Congress, with the media, and it is very important that we make sure TPS holders are not scared to be out in public and to say that I belong here in the US. And so for us, I know that as Nepali speaking individuals, that it's hard to get that media attention or garner that type of press that hits a broader audience. But the more we put ourselves out there, I think the more that we will garner that attention. And our fight is not just with us, but with all the folks working on TPS and all the countries that have been impacted by these horrible decisions around TPS. So it's always important to say, yes, today we're focused on Nepali TPS holders, but really altogether, we're focused on all TPS holders, making sure all TPS holders have permanent residency, and we are also in this fight with Dreamers as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'll just add that I view data as complementary to narrative, because the stories on the ground are really sort of how issues are defined. But for so many, especially when it comes to decision makers who are thinking about cost benefit in a very sort of narrow way, sometimes data becomes the narrative. And so this is an opportunity with this report to be complementary to the work that Adhikaar and others have been doing for years, and to also speak a different language to those who speak data. With the DACA related work that I have done with the Center for American Progress and other partners, so much of the early work, I think, was about getting respondents to feel like that their voices mattered in a way that could be amplified to create a national narrative. There are very similar parallels between DACA and TPS, the uncertainty of legal status and then having work authorization. DACA recipients have been able to sort of attract attention in ways that TPS holders have not, despite very similar outcomes that we see in the data. And so my hope is that this first step helps others kind of see that their voice matters as well in a way that, when amplified, can really be impactful for decisions made at the national level. If that does not happen, it is still okay, because Adhikaar's work in terms of creating that sample frame, outreaching to 10 to 11,000 of the 15,000 in the entire country, gives us scientifically a lot of confidence to say that what is true from the stories that Adhikaar has on the ground is also systematic to the broader group. And that is important as well, because sometimes people may sort of respond to an anecdote with the cynical, the plural of anecdotes are not data. But now we have an opportunity to respond back and say, well, here are the data if you want the data. So now hear me when I tell you the story of the gas station owner, of the cook who now owns a business in Colorado as well as a home, and whose child is now going to Colorado State. And so I think data and narrative are so complementary, and weaving those two things together is, I think, what we were able to accomplish here together.
I totally agree with it's almost like the narrative and data are two sides of the same coin. So you need the whole thing to have numbers to the story and then face to the data. So that totally makes sense. And also would like to take the opportunity to thank you for all the data that you've provided, all of us on DACA as well as TPS. That really helps the whole movement. So as a follow-up to that question, I think we have a few minutes more. So how do we build support in Congress? That's what we need to do going forward to push for a legislation that provides permanent protections for TPS holders. Do you have a few minutes, a few points to talk about that?
Tom, do you want to start? Do you want me to start?
I think you can end, because I think that'll be a powerful ending. I mean, I think for me as a researcher, bringing these data to the conversation is the role that I see myself playing. But I think to sort of think strategically with partners about the questions to ask that fill knowledge gaps, because those are the sort of answers that decision makers want to know. I think those are the kinds of projects that I love taking on. And when I think about this particular moment on October 21st, 2020, 13 days until the election, what I think is important for all of us to remember is that for our American democracy, so much attention is focused every 4 years because of who is going to be president. But every 2 years, we have the opportunity, for those of us who are fortunate enough to be able to vote, to shape and reshape Congress in a way that hopefully moves us toward a direction of greater inclusiveness. And so whether or not these data are helpful now is fingers crossed. But these data come 2021, on the eve of the next general election, hopefully will become informative again. And I know the folks at Adhikaar, I know my team, I know many others in the movement, there is no stopping, because one loss, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep grinding. And if we have an opportunity to update these data and can use updated data to inform the next Congress that sits, then I'll be here to help.
Thanks, Tom. I think as Tom said, we know now that the Senate is capable of action, right? We know because they're nominating a Supreme Court justice when we really should be waiting for the election. But yet they've told us over and over again that they don't think that it's time for immigration reform. When we have many people, I would say 500,000 people whose lives are on the line that could be deported in March, which is not a long time from now. If we're thinking about what it takes for us to move, we're almost in November, right? That's December, January, February, March, April. We're talking about 5 months where people could have to uproot their lives, where they may be facing deportations because of the decision with Ramos v. Nielsen, which implicates Batra v. Nielsen. And so I think it's really important for us to be pushing the Senate into action as much as possible now. We don't really see a opening for that necessarily, but so we're focused on both the agenda of getting the Senate to pass H.R. 6, the Dream and Promise Act, which would grant permanent residency to all TPS holders and DACA recipients and Dreamers, actually broader. And we really think the Senate needs to not be afraid to take this agenda on. both the Democrats and the Republicans need to step up and to the game and give folks that belong in this country permanent residency. But we know that may not be possible, so we're really focused on, no matter what administration takes charge in January, that the first 100 days there needs to be actions to protect TPS holders. And we're really looking at, can the president, whoever the president is then, grant DED to all TPS holders, because that is within their power to help continue to protect people to be able to stay here. But I think what people can do at home right now is call their senators right now and demand that they actually protect TPS holders, that they take action in the Senate to pass HR 6. And if, you know, the elections happens and whoever comes into power, like, we need to be demanding action in January to protect TPS holders so they are not facing deportation in March. So we really hope that all of you will join us in that effort. We know, especially in the Nepali speaking community, everybody knows somebody that's a TPS holder. And so we really need to be making sure that we're not just talking about TPS, but we're actually calling our members of Congress, that we're actually calling our senators, that we're actually calling whoever's going to be the president and saying, we need action to protect our family members now.
Thank you for all that. And that brings the call to an end. But each of your thoughts highlighted the importance of TPS for the Nepali community, and the survey adds even more evidence. I'd just like to reiterate that. Thank you everyone for joining the call. And again, thank you for all the speakers for their time. And to end this on a good note, I would like to wish you all a very happy Dasai, which is a really big festival that's happening right now in Nepal, to all who celebrate it. Thank you again, and hope you have a great day.